Well, I'll tell you what, folks, it's an honor and a privilege to bring you this next video. And this was done about 5 years ago with Dr. Andy Toltec, and this is the first conversation that we had, and it's so amazing. I can't even begin really to describe how amazing this stuff is. We called this Demystifying Spirituality. This was number 1. I don't know how many we went through, 6 or 7, maybe 8 or 10. Been trying to get a hold of Dr. Toltec. We lost track with one another. But this is some of my foundational understandings in spirituality, and I believe, without fear of contradiction, some of the best teachings on spirituality that have ever been put down on paper, that have ever been put in a video, that have ever been put in an audio. So this is Demystifying Spirituality with Dr. Andy Toltec. That's a pseudonym. The reason why is because he is an MD psychiatrist who works in high levels of medicine, so he's not able to just let everybody know that he's also a shaman that works with indigenous shaman, and when a shaman has trouble, they come to Dr. Andy Toltec. So an amazing combination of esoteric and spiritual thought and academic scientific thought. That is Dr. Andy Toltec, and you'll hear very little of me on these videos, which will please some of you, and it's by design because Dr. Toltec is a wealth of information, and we're going to look now at Demystifying Spirituality with Dr. Andy Toltec. Enjoy it. Let me know what you think.
My actual training is in evidence-based medicine and cognitive behavioral psychology. And evidence-based medicine is actually rejecting the materialist modern scientific academic model. Quite simply because they're know-it-alls. They are trying to close gaps that cannot be closed in knowledge. And modern medicine the most modern medicine is acknowledging things like acupuncture, despite the fact that the older medicine, theoretically based medicine, was rejecting it because it didn't like the theory. Everything had to be chemical, everything had to be anatomical. Now it's letting in psychology, acupuncture, any of the alternative therapies that can actually prove themselves to be effective in real life. And they are also abandoning a lot of the medical therapies that were only supported by theory and were not effective in real life. So this is a very big move in medicine, and the training that I received was of the very highest scientific standards, including statistical analysis and formal philosophical logic. Every diagnosis in medicine is a theory. It is taken from an incredible amount of information from many, many different sources, and it is actually conforming to the original version of what is a good theory. It's conforming to the idea that a theory should be judged by consistency with the evidence, not with linear logic based on other theories. So this is what has actually brought me into this world. I actually came through studying in chronic pain clinic, where medicine has actually come to the end of what it can do. The painkillers, the surgery haven't worked, and medicine is looking for alternatives. It includes psychology, but they're also using things like Reiki, and so I left medicine to investigate, to search for truth in the spiritual and healing world. What I actually found there was quite frightening, that most of the healing world is based simply on telling people what they want to hear. I'm trained in many forms of psychology, and in corporate psychology, you must reduce everything to its absolute basics. The gravest errors happen when there are errors in the basics. And what I found is that people in the healing world did not even understand the most basic words that they were using. This allows misinterpretation, and it is very interesting that you put on the written introduction, this can be a life changer, because not having proper definitions of words where words can mean whatever they want to mean, where if a word sounds nice, it must be good, that actually allows up to become down. It's become quite a topsy-turvy world. I asked you yesterday, what is energy? This is the most basic concept in all healing. And you came out with the stock answer, which is, it is a level of vibrational frequency.
I think you asked me, what is a dimension?
What is a dimension? Yes. That one's a little later on my list. The energy one, people say it is vibrational frequency. I have asked all sorts of people working in healing what energy is. It's vibrational frequency. That doesn't tell us what energy is. It's just jargon. Pretty sounding jargon. What energy is, we need a central concept of this. Psychology has that concept. That concept is that it is a fluid ability to change, and positive energy is motivation when we use that energy in order to change positively. And negative energy comes from the stress that is caused by trying to hold back that energy and resist change. So this gives us a practical explanation of what energy is. Saying it is vibrational frequency, energy may be measured in vibrational frequency, but that's like asking what is a car and being told a car is 4.7 meters long. It doesn't tell us. This is avoiding the point. And I've done some workshops on what is love. What is love, Jeff?
What is love? But that's the question of the ages, isn't it, Dr. Toltec?
It's easy.
What is love? I think, love is really, if you're trying to define it, I mean, love is, is it emotion? Is it an action? I think love is really a chemical response in your brain because of the way someone else makes you feel. I think when someone loves you, what they really love is the way you make them feel when you're around.
That sounds like codependence. Love is wanting to do the best for the other person. It's very simple.
I would agree with that.
And if we remember that, then we remember that love can't be codependence. If two people are in love, then doing the best for the other person is also caring for yourself. So love can never be self-damaging. When people say God is love, what do they expect? Does that mean obedience to the demands of their ego? That they get what they want now? Or does it mean that God is a good parent to us? That God is the perfect modern concept of a parent who loves our spirit and wants to make that spirit independent and powerful through experiencing a learning process. These are very different concepts of love to the concepts that people have when they forget that love is wanting the best for another person in the long term.
Absolutely. It's really the diametric opposite of the modern concept of love, because like most things, I think that love to most people has more to do with how I feel than that other person, because we're very selfish and we're very, taking oriented rather than giving oriented.
But to really love does feel great. It feels perfect. It isn't a contradiction. The contradiction comes in people forgetting the real basics, forgetting that love is wanting the best for another person. It's not.
I love that concept. It's a great truth.
Most things are incredibly simple. It comes back to this: the greatest errors come when you forget the basics. So, where we actually are talking about, there is so much talk about being conscious. I don't see New Agers being conscious. I don't see them understanding how their own bodies and minds work. I don't see them thinking, them reasoning. What I see is them being subconscious, less than conscious, following emotions, which are nothing more than the programming of society. And they physically relax. Their bodies go into digestive mode rather than fight or flight mode when their world is as they have always known it. This is not thinking to create a better future for all of us, which is what being conscious should be. Being conscious is being constantly aware. In fact, it is a fight against the emotions. It is a fight against hypocrisy, where our conscious mind, which is idealistic because it works with words and theories, is in a battle against the subconscious mind that controls our actions, that are traditionalist and just copy like sheep. This is where the sheeple mentality comes from. It comes from the emotions. Psychology understands this very well. The emotions are our concept of how the world is, based on our experience. What we need is theory to actually move beyond this to create a better world. That is consciousness.
That's fascinating.
Consciousness is understanding your own mind. It starts with understanding the difference between thought and emotion. And with emotion, not everything that is unconscious is emotion. Emotion is what comes from the subconscious. Samuel Sargan talks about this in Entities of the Parasitic Body, that there is the subconscious messages can be divided into emotion, which comes from the lower parts of the mind that are below and less worthy than the conscious mind, and he calls the messages of the highest parts of the mind sentiment. And this is the heart that we're supposed to be listening to. The whole of spirituality appears confused. I put up on the screen, or you put up on the screen, thank you very much, Jeff,
You're welcome.
Picture of the chakra system, which actually shows 2 chakra systems. And we can see here, there are 2 heads, and there are 2 hearts. The physical head is actually the solar plexus of the whole of us, and it has a physical heart beneath it. It also has the heart of our complete body, our total body, above it. That's the heart that needs listening to.
So the higher heart is the one we need to listen to.
Yes. The lower heart is actually the center of codependence. It is the center of sexuality, thinking with our reproductive organs. And if you merely say to people, follow your heart, then people actually follow anything that isn't their head. And the characteristics of the chakra system, of the messages that we are actually getting from these chakras, which are all like individual mini minds within us that are constantly working, but that our consciousness visits. And at present, the consciousness of humanity is visiting the 3rd chakra, the solar plexus, the head. Each level, as we go higher, gets progressively more silent. The noisiest levels, the most chemical levels, are the root chakra, then the sacral chakra. We are starting to get into abstract in the solar plexus chakra. So the noisier the message, and this has been known for thousands of years in meditation, the noisier the message, the less valid it is. This is why we seek the silence to actually find our heart. Our heart isn't these screaming emotions and chemicals and hormones, and that is what most people obey when they're told to listen to your heart.
Absolutely, absolutely. Almost exclusively, I would postulate.
At the moment I'm in Mexico, and listen to your heart really does mean listen to your genitals. Follow them with total obedience.
It's not too much different in Florida, Dr. Toltec.
You don't have traditions like virginity before marriage and promiscuity after it. They are still taking 15-year-old boys for their 15th birthday present to see prostitutes. It is very traditional in this part of Mexico.
Wow.
Very traditional. You still hear women say, if he... Si no te pega, no te quiere. If he doesn't hit you, he doesn't love you.
Wow.
Yes, that far behind. I'm sure that Florida is several decades ahead.
I would have to agree with you.
It was a real shock coming from Britain to here. So we actually see on this chakra system that there are 3 different versions of love. The sacral chakra has a codependent love that is involved in childcare. The heart chakra here is the sense of being in love, the madness of love, the intensity of love, which actually comes from the inner child. This is the part of us that actually deals with dreams. With the dreams.
That would be the lower heart, right?
No, this is the central heart. That is the inner child. And the inner child's job within us is to deal with the bizarre dream worlds where there is no cause and effect. Where things are... Because there is no cause and effect, there is no good or evil there, really. Because there's no consequence. And so this part of us actually deals with intensity. And it can survive any intensity. It is unable to differentiate between the intensity of an argument and the intensity of making love. It doesn't differentiate because it doesn't understand cause and effect. It doesn't understand that there are consequences to that argument. It's just intense. It's passion. It's great. It's interesting. If we look at the upper 3 chakras, this is actually our spirit. And the third eye is the heart of our spirit. And this is what has the eternal, caring, all-seeing love that is constructive. So this chakra system has been very much confused. The physical chakras are a perfect fractal of the upper chakras. You know what a fractal is? A fractal is when you break a laser plate into many pieces, you do not get, if you cut it in half, you do not get half an image. You actually get the same image, but half the size. And this is where the same pattern repeats again and again and again. And we are a model of the universe, according to M theory. The question about what are dimensions, a dimension, where they're talking about a 9-dimensional space, that means that there are 9 lengths, breadths, and heights. A spatial dimension is a length. The 3 spatial dimensions we know are length, breadth, and height. What they're saying is that there are another 6 of those, and they're all at right angles. I see this very much as existing in 2 planes, which are parallel planes that are not right-angled in space, but right-angled in time. And this is actually the first of these 3-dimensional spaces is the astral, which is where we dream. The second of these 3-dimensional spaces is the etheric, where our spirits come from, which can be called heaven. And this appears to fit perfectly with the mathematical conclusions of M theory. I've checked, it appears to work in all of the equations. I'm not an expert, but it appears to work in all of the multi-dimensional equations. But these are dimensions that are orthogonal at right angles in time rather than space. So they all have the same x, y, and z coordinates, but a different time coordinate. So this is truly parallel spaces. That the physical has parallel to it an energy space, which is the astral, in which time works very differently. This is why we get quantum physics. This is why we get the laws of relativity, that at the speed of light, there is no linear time. And then there is a third time within the etheric. And Everything in the etheric exists in the astral and exists in the physical. But
and does it work the other way around?
Yes, yes, or very nearly. You can have things that exist in the astral and etheric which do not exist in the physical. So in life after death, the parts of our mind that are actually a part of the 3 upper chakras can exist bodiless in the dream world without a body. Our spirit can return to heaven. Everything, the physical world is to an extent the last level of these. Because these are fractals, these keep happening time and time again. We actually have the same with the physical body, the energy body, and the thought body. That our body, there are 3 bodies superimposed on one another. This is where things like muscle memory come into it. Where when a traumatic memory is actually trapped in the muscle, it's actually trapped in that part of the mind body, that part of the thought body. So with the thought body, we can actually change the thought, or we can change the body. Still, we can change both the thought and the body. The way I see it is that mind is an empty template. Energy is the colour that fills that template. And the physical literally turns that into a sculpture. So the mind has structure. The body has inertia. Energy moves freely between them, and it is like an elastic band connecting the two. If you tug on energy, you're tugging against the structure of the mind and the inertia of the body. And usually the energy, whatever you do to change energy, it just snaps straight back to where it came from, unless you manage to pull hard enough on an elastic band to change the structure of the mind or the inertia of the body. The doctors generally tend to work on the structure of the body, the inertia of the body, which does, with its inertia, it does change the mind. Psychologists work on the mind, which can change the body if they are successful in changing the mind. But the body will always resist them. What I choose to do is to actually move the mind and the body and energy all at the same place to a new position to overcome resistance. So I do energy work with psychology and exercises to change posture. A lot of those exercises come from the original Pilates therapeutic system or from yoga. And the 3 move at once, and they stay where you have moved them to.
Interesting. So instead of trying to go in and fix something, so to speak, you would just go and create something new, a new pathway? Am I oversimplifying it, or am I totally misconstruing it?
Instead of trying to fix something, I'm trying to fix something at the 2 important levels: the structure of the mind and the inertia of the body.
Okay.
And I'm using energy to facilitate that process.
Gotcha, I'm with you now.
So the 3 move together. So I'm not trying to move thought and indirectly tug the body along. I'm not trying to move the body and indirectly tug thought along. Or using energy and encountering the resistance of the structure of the mind and the inertia of the body. And really the chakra system is psychology. It is not energy. Forget energy. The chakras are like glasses that are filled with energy. Seeing the energy really doesn't matter. Understanding the thought, how each chakra works, that is what's important. And it is the most incredible form of psychology. The root chakra learns by reward and punishment. immediate reward and punishment. The sacral chakra learns by copying. The solar plexus is working by mechanically processing the theories and knowledge that it has been given, and respectively aggressive, passive, and assertive. Assertivity is another area that there is a problem with understanding, that it has literally been perverted. People who are passive aggressive have seen assertivity, and it looks like magic. It looks, oh, the assertive person just somehow got their way, and the other person submitted so completely they don't even want to stab them in the back. Assertiveness must be good. It's how I get my way. What's assertiveness really? Do you know what assertiveness is really?
I do not.
Assertiveness looks like that from the outside, but the inner process is completely different. Aggressivity is I want. Passivity is you want. Assertiveness is when you actually take a step back to think about the best compromise for both and then explain it. And that's why the other person agrees with you. Because you have thought first and explained the best outcome for both people.
So you haven't really asserted your will, you've created the proverbial win-win.
Yes, it is the win-win situation from sales. It is exactly that. Aggressive is the win-lose, passive is the lose-win, and assertiveness is win-win. And
wow, that stands most of what most people believe right on its head.
I call that New York assertiveness. Yes, it is far more common in the US. This belief that assertiveness is getting your way with some magic of the voice, some overpowering energetic influence over people, when it's actually not asking for what you want. An assertive person never asks for what they want. They always ask for the best compromise.
Now that's a fairly transformational way of looking at things, a fairly transformational way of dealing with things, and me being a dabbler in Kabbalah, that really is trying to become a giver rather than a taker, and it seems very, very logical to me, and it just feels right, if I can say that, to learn and to discover, and this is something pretty new for me, it's a bit of a revelation, that really the way to get, when people, like you say, when people are getting their way, the ones that are really mostly getting their way and getting their way the most successfully are those that are trying to make the way the best way for everyone. And that's really the key, is not to try to get what you want, but to try to create the scenario where everyone can get what they want.
Yeah.
That's amazing. That's what a great way to live. Could you imagine if our world
existed that? Not what they want,
what is best for them. That's a very important distinction. Not what they want, but what is best for them.
Now, this is such an incredibly complete system. The baby is aggressive. The child is assertive and copying. The adult should be assertive. And we go through the tantrums as we move from aggression to learning passivity. And we go through adolescent rebellion as we actually gain our independence and become supposedly assertive. This is also the history of human evolution over the last. So, it was around about maybe 2800 BC, I believe, with the beginning of Buddhism, that it really started, that humanity actually moved from this trial and error, reward and punishment, brutal, aggressive society into a society that was now talking about love, passivity, compassion. About 300 years ago, with the beginning of enlightenment, we moved into assertiveness. Unfortunately, any spiritual belief that comes from 300 years ago was passive-aggressive. Humanity had not moved into assertiveness yet. When they talk of the coming age, it is the move into the next stage, into the heart chakra. So when Kabbalism teaches you to be giving, that is bringing you to the child stage, which everybody needs to get to, and as an adult, through. Then it becomes, and this is, the root chakra is me now. The sacral chakra is popularity. It is the person in front, thinking about the reaction of the person in front of your face. The solar plexus, which is where we should be, is abstract, theoretically thinking about the benefit of everybody. And what we actually see is this, that our evolution has been this expansion of the sphere of concern, the number of people that we're concerned with. Root chakra is only me. Sacral starts with family and goes to tribe. It's the people that we deal with face to face. Once we're in the solar plexus chakra, that opens out into city, state, nation, world, universe. More to the point, perhaps, it goes humans, sustainable planet, other species. And these are mental changes that have been so obvious in our society that we just don't appreciate that 50 years ago people didn't think about. We don't appreciate that people could have wars because the stage of their consciousness was at the level of there is nothing outside the benefit of my nation. World peace comes through thinking about the whole of humanity rather than just your nation. Then we have moved out to include the animals, the ecosystem. These concepts were really hardly talked about until very, very recently. They were not a matter of public concern until very, very recently. These are massive changes in the level of consciousness.
So where would you say we are now on this level?
What is available to us, we are right at the very, very end of solar plexus. Solar plexus deals with the physical world. Solar plexus deals with science. Where I see us in science is that we actually have all of the basic information that we could actually ever need from science. There is a defragmenting process. Solar plexus has linear thought. The heart has this, because it works with dreams, it builds jigsaws. And we now have enough information to actually create these jigsaws of all of the fragments that we have been given by the individual ivory towers to put them into perspective, and including to say, these are the holes. This is where science does not work. This is where we have to go into the abstract and the non-physical. But those non-physical realms, traditionally, have to be dealt with through philosophy, which has very, very strict rules of formal logic, and its first principle is objectivity. And I really think that science with the Human Genome Project, has exposed how little we know about genetics, how little we know about inheritance. With epigenetics, they've discovered that the rather bizarre belief that all inheritance was in chromosomal DNA was always wrong. The on-off switches for genes are actually in the proteins of the chromosomes, not in the DNA. And these are vastly more fluid than DNA. We're even proving that DNA can change in response to a chemical stimulus in less than an hour. That's been proven in the laboratory time and time again with the lowest organisms as the easiest to investigate.
Right.
The on-off switches are in the proteins, and they are even more fluid than DNA. We really are not born to our station, as Darwinian, Victorian genetics and evolution would have had us believe. I've actually seen geneticists coming out and saying in papers, we have to abandon Darwinism, we have to go back to Lamarckism.
And you've seen this recently?
Yes, in the last year.
Very interesting.
The evidence is Darwinism was defined by it was impossible to inherit any change that happened in life. So if you evolved in life, your children couldn't inherit it. Now, and one of the other proofs is the Human Genome Project has shown that around 35% of our genes are viral. They have come from viruses, and the virus infects the whole body, it changes the DNA of the whole body, including the eggs and sperm. Therefore, Darwinism actually collapsed. We've known this in medicine for about 40 years. But evolution's catching on now. But it produces a very, very different look and feel to the theory of evolution, because we really are not born to our station. Even our genes can change. We can change anything in our lives. This is what the latest sciences are saying. And the lack of understanding of how we have such hard, powerful knowledge about how protein codes are inherited. We know absolutely nothing about the mind. We can't find it anywhere physical. We are coming to this point of a far more Cartesian thought, where the mind can be just learnt in a potential. That we are born with some potential, some structure to the mind, but that it depends how we fill it, and it depends how we use it. One of the really major advances in scientific knowledge has been cognitive behavioral therapy. And it really has started to illuminate why people think the way they do, how it is learned, and how it can be changed. Everything in science is saying we are capable of change. Genetics, psychology, everything. We are capable of change. We are born with a potential. We are learning things that are against that potential.
Doctor, we have a caller that asked a question that I'm, wanting to scream out myself. Obviously, the change is possible. We can all change to be what is best for us. How do we do so? How do we move towards that change? And thank you for that question, Karen.
The very first thing that we must do, Karen, is to actually learn up from down. We are actually being taught things which are the opposite of positive change, labeled as positive change. It is becoming more conscious. It is this battle against the hypocrisy of the emotions, so that we are actually making our actions consistent with our idealistic thoughts. And we have to learn that. We have to learn how the world works. The solar plexus chakra is dependent on the quality of information it has in it. It is actually capable of discerning truth, but it is limited by the quality of information that is within it. The sacral chakra does not care how the world works. It is an evolutionary throwback from a violent world in which the first method of learning of the root chakra is trial and error, but trial and error is very dangerous in nature. You may not make a mistake, but making that mistake once may be fatal. So the next level of learning was to copy those who had already learned by trial and error, those that had learnt to learned to survive. It was copying the successful survivors. But that has no understanding of the world. All that it can do is to copy and repeat traditions. So a lot of what we are being told is repeating traditions for popularity, because that relaxes us physically.
You just described the 20 years I spent as a Pentecostal evangelist.
Yeah, and a lot besides. Doctors who won't come into the modern world and practice evidence-based medicine, every religion, the New Age. There are people who, I was very fortunate. My training was amongst people who are intellectuals in power, who have a fundamental understanding of psychology, who are designing systems called the tools of cultural change in order to make people more conscious. They're doing this in medicine, they're doing this in health, they're doing this in the corporate world. They are changing people to make them more conscious. These systems particularly come from Britain. Strangely, one of the things I'm doing in Mexico is helping the Mexican government introduce a British-designed curriculum for secondary schools. These systems are being bought all over the world. The HMOs in the US are buying the British healthcare systems. It's something called the National Institute of Clinical Excellence. NICE. The pharmaceutical industry has no power in Britain. They are like a whipped dog. The medical profession and the government have taken power off the pharmaceutical industry. They have brought the best statisticians in to check all of their data, and they're saying a lot of it's crap. Half the drugs available in, that's probably an overestimate, but half the drugs available in the US, the British government and the British medical profession have just turned around to the pharmaceutical industry and said, hey, you have no evidence. It may look good, but we've analysed it. And these are being bought by the National Institute of Clinical Excellence, is being bought all around the world by governments to try to bring the pharmaceutical industry and the medical industry under control.
That's definitely a reformation that we need to have here in the United States for sure. Now, Dr. Toltec, we're starting to look a little bit at time. Are there some easy well, maybe not easy, but are there some how-tos that you can give our worldwide audience to start even at the end of this program, to start building their consciousness so we can start moving towards this change that I think anyone with 3 or 4 functioning brain cells would be eagerly desirous of?
The first thing is there are 3 worlds, 3 planes of existence that are parallel that have different rules. The rules of the astral, the dream world, where we dream, are not the same as the rules of the physical world. They're not the same as the rules of the etheric. The very first thing is to stop confusing and thinking that there is one world and one set of laws. It is to actually identify what belongs to the physical world. So when people say time is cyclical in the astral. When people say there is no cause and effect, people love quantum physics and try applying it to their lives. It's not talking about the solid world, it's actually talking about the astral world, the dream world. These are the rules of the dream world. They're actually, it is a strange quirk of quantum physics that looking at that scale, they're looking into a different universe. That's why the rules are so different. We mustn't confuse that with the real world. So that is the very first, not to confuse dreams with God, not to confuse the real world with the dream world.
Now, you made a very powerful statement to me one time, Dr. Toltec. You said that in the etheric, there's no words or pictures. Didn't you say that to me?
Yes.
Please explain that. I think that's transformational.
Raw, pure thought. It is completely abstract. If there are words, if there are visions of anything that you can relate to, then it comes from the astral. And the importance of learning science, psychology, really understanding our world, and the true concepts that we're now arriving at in science of how this world works, is that that is absolutely necessary to convert the raw conceptual thought of the higher self, the spirit, into words that can be used in this world. If we don't have that knowledge, if we don't have the objectivity, the concepts of how this world works, we end up misinterpreting what our spirit is telling us.
So the only way to make the etheric materialize in the physical world is to make sure we understand the vocabulary and the laws and the rules.
Yeah. We need to actually gain the basic knowledge from the real world. There is no easy path. The
Say
path,
that again, Dr. Toltec.
there is no easy path. These are stages of development. It takes from adolescent rebellion to midlife crisis to prepare a solar plexus chakra to go into the fourth level. It's 20 years of work, and it can't happen before you have completed all of those levels, all of the criteria necessary, and most of them are knowledge, rationality, objectivity, a sense of, it is actually a sense of who you are, to actually know yourself rather than to be who society wants you to be, which comes from the sacral chakra. You have to wipe that out. You have to get beyond who society wants you to be. The solar plexus chakra is quite an isolated chakra. As I say, it takes 2 years' work to stop being a baby. It takes 12 years' work to stop being a child. It will take at least another 20 years to stop being a young adult and become a wise, mature adult, which is only just becoming available to our society. The complete knowledge is only just becoming available to our society. And that is the coming of the new age, the wonderful time that we're in, the wonderful opportunity that we've been presented with. And it is hard work. There is a lot of learning and a lot of unlearning.
So much of what you say I can see, mirroring in my own life. I just turned 49 years old a few weeks ago, and I remember as I was meditating, I was, and I've just, the last couple of years have been tremendous years of spiritual growth and enlightenment for me. And I remember thinking that, what a shame that I didn't learn this or start to have this growth pattern 20 years ago. And the thought came to me, it was just a pure thought. There was no words or visions, that it was quite impossible for me to have done it then. It only could happen now.
Yeah. I think there's some rule in Judaism that you're not even allowed to become a rabbi until you're 40 years old. They don't even start rabbinic training until 40. Until then, forget it. You're too young. And this is a stage in life. It's and it really is marked by midlife crisis, when a whole worldview of the solar plexus falls apart, and you move into another new worldview. And this is the thing, we can't remember how we saw the world as a child. We can't remember how we saw the world as a baby. And when we go into the next level, we can't remember how we saw the world as a young adult, as opposed to a wise adult. So it is psychological development, and it is age dependent, it is experience dependent, it is learning dependent.
It is going to take some time. Despite the microwave mentality of the modern West, there's no excuse for hard work, or there's no, not excuse, but there's no substitute for hard work.
Yes, this isn't. Interestingly, the original work on Buddhism, the chakras, was very, very clear about having to prepare and cleanse the lowest chakras first, whereas the modern tendency is having a half-hour window of opportunity in your agenda, so go work on your crown chakra and think you can achieve enlightenment without cleansing the lowest chakra.
It's so laughable, but it's so true. It's just ridiculous, the things that we think that we can do, and it just doesn't work that way.
Did you hear the story of Michael Lee, who actually bought, basically, I think he's mainly responsible for bringing Phoenix Rising yoga into the West?
No, I did not hear that.
Oh, he was a Western yoga instructor, thought he was God's gift, went to a Southeast Asian monastery to teach them all about Buddhism. They gave him about 3 square yards of garden to care for and told him once he'd learned to care for that and sorted out his lower chakra, he was allowed to talk. It took him 8 years. 8 years of having 3 square yards of garden as his whole life, not being able to utter a word before he had actually cleansed his root chakra. EFT.
Wow, he invested 8 years.
Yeah. Well, I don't think I think he was almost imprisoned. Punishment for his arrogance. EFT is actually one of the best shortcuts imaginable. This is another piece of knowledge that we have recently acquired. In the first couple of months of getting it, I had done over 6,000 rounds. It is just hundreds of rounds per day. The concept of nothingness is really interesting, that the idea with yin and yang was never to try to become both yin and yang. It was to become neither yin nor yang. It is to move beyond yin and yang. Our limitations are very much concerned with the good person that we think we are. What people are using EFT for is to try to remove the things they don't like in themselves. The things that actually define us, limit us, and hold us back are the things that we do like about ourselves. We have to get rid of those too. That leaves us free, so that one of the things with this assertiveness is that it is actually not rigid. It is not situation specific. The answer is situation specific. There is no one right answer for everything. Everything becomes a matter of balance and readjusting the balance. So black and white statements are actually limiting. To actually move on, we actually have to delete the things that we think are good about us. And the problem is, with the dichotomy, positive attracts negative, negative attracts positive, you just keep re-encountering the same negativity over and over again if you try to only be good. The subconscious is highly polarized like that. Everything good you have in there, there will be something equally as evil. To permanently get rid of the evil, you have to free yourself from both.
Wow.
That's
so to really be filled up, you have to be totally emptied.
Yes. Your subconscious mind has to become empty. This is why I've done thousands of rounds of EFT, to deprogram myself of everything, so that I'm only me. I'm not what society and experience has taught me. I'm only me.
Now, what happens to you practically when you deprogram even those things that you would call positive?
You can find life funny. This is liberating your inner child. The inner child doesn't care what society thinks. It doesn't care about self-image. You start doing things like going to clown classes to learn to be a clown. You start enjoying life, being free. You actually find that all of your joints free up, and you can move easier. You get a fluidity of body, and you are able to act as one in total unity. You don't have these two opposites pulling inside you all of the time, confusing you. You have no doubt. At this point, you can act as one. You can align yourself perfectly with your spirit, because you don't care what society thinks of what God thinks.
Wow. Reminds me of a story I heard one time that this fellow was, and I'm sure it's apocryphal, it's not true, but it's a very good illustration of what you're saying. Somebody asked this, American Indian fellow, what's the matter? And he said, I feel like I have two dogs fighting inside me. And the old story says, well, which dog wins? And the fellow said, well, it's the dog that I feed the most. And what you're telling us is we need to quit feeding both dogs so the dogs leave and it can just be us.
Yeah. Yeah. Osho wrote a great book on Taoist principles called The Book of Nothing. And it is very much getting away from the dichotomy. The dichotomy actually comes from the second level, love and hate. Then it again ties into assertiveness. Not the tug of war between I want, you want. It is find the best solution for everybody.
And it reminds me of something that Yeshua said. He said that he that will really find life will lose his life.
Every change of worldview is a death. It is a rebirth. It is the death of an old worldview, an old person. It is a complete way of living that changes. A complete change of priority. When you jump from the solar plexus into the heart, you have to deal with the astral. As somebody who is, if you can imagine, Richard Dawkins jumping into having to deal with dreams, angels and demons, he's going to have a load of fun when his worldview breaks, and he will probably do all he can to protect his present worldview and not jump to the next level.
Wow, so it is definitely some work for all of us. Dr. Toltec, did you want to take a quick call? Someone does have a question.
Certainly.
All righty. And I believe this is Karen with a quick question. Karen, this is
Hello,
Jeff.
Karen.
You're on the air. What's your question for Dr. Toltec?
Hi there. I'm listening to you, and I do understand quite a bit of what you're saying because of my background. My question to you is I don't hear anything about the potential for second-order changes, if you understand what I mean by that phrase.
What do you mean by second-order changes?
It's from systems theory, and first-order changes being those kind of plodding along changes that we do, the hard work we do in cognitive behavioral therapy, that kind of thing. And second-order changes are those kind of quantum leaps in change that maybe an event in our life leads us to quickly reorganize our thought patterns.
I've called them the terrible twos of toddlers changing to be a child, adolescent rebellion, and midlife crisis. Those are the absolute quantum changes. And they may be somewhat mistimed. Some people don't go through the terrible twos until they're 30 years old. But those are these are truly quantum changes. These worldviews are so complete that even the use of vocabulary changes. The words change, the theories change, our perception itself changes. Imagine going from a world in which the only thing that matters is what the person in front of your face thinks to a world which actually has cause and effect in it. The sacral chakra the child does not really understand cause and effect. It does not acknowledge that its world works on cause and effect. It is this quantum change to actually being empowered to change our world in terms of outcomes. That is a true quantum leap, and it is so quantum that it actually involves change of life, it involves change of belief. Atheism is perfectly normal in this third level. You may have to leave behind your religious community, and then when you go to fourth level, you have to find one again. So
it's all part of growing up.
We have Richard Dawkins laughing at it. Oh, angels and devils exist. Oh, no, you're mad. And then if he actually goes to fourth level, he's going to have to take all of that back. These are quantum changes. And yes, it is different things that actually push people over the edge. But being pushed over the edge when you're not ready for it means you can't cope in that next level. You actually exist at two levels at the same time in general. There is a transformation between two levels. You're working on one and cleansing the other, or should be.
Makes perfect sense. Doctor, we have about 3 minutes. Why don't you see if you can wrap this up and put a bow on it, so to speak, and kind of bring us to a place where we can maybe digest this and, or at least get it all on our plate so we can digest it later.
Yeah, little request. Explain everything in 3 minutes.
I guess I'm asking for a summary.
Yes, you should have asked me to write one. That we are born with this potential to develop during our lives that is dependent on our experience, on our attitudes. Positive energy is accepting change, accepting positive change. Being the concept of tranquility is being tranquil with change, not suffering stress from changing. It is not the more usual thing, which is the patient is feeling stressed because they don't want to change and they want the therapist to vampire their energy so that they feel tranquil despite this motivation in order to change. And everything is very, very simple at the basics. We don't need things to be complicated. Love is just doing the best for other people. Energy is the capacity to change. All very, very simple if we don't forget the basics. The problem comes when we forget the basics.
Wow, is about the only thing you can say about that. This is the kind of thing you've got to go back and listen to several times. You've got to get your pen and your paper, and you've got to write this stuff down. You've got to study it, because it is deep, deep, deep. I will be bringing you the rest of these as I can get through them. It's a little bit of a laborious process, because I have to go back to the Blog Talk Radio. I have to download it, and then I have to take it into my audio editing program and try to clean it up and take out all the pauses and the snaps, crackles, and pops of Blog Talk Radio. We don't get it perfect, but it's pretty doggone good stuff, and certainly worth the investment of your time. And I hope that you consider this station, this channel, to be a good investment of your time and an investment of your resources as well. Thank you to those of you that have been posting the channel URL on your social media. It's having an effect. Thank you very much. You are an unindoctrinator. And thank you to those that are giving financial contributions, those people that are stepping up and becoming part of the unindoctrinator team. We are building our message, and we are becoming more proficient at delivering it. And as we continue to get the donations from you, we'll continue to do that as well. I can't thank you enough. I want you to know I appreciate you deeply. I respect you completely. And I just am very happy and honored and humbled to have you as part of this team. And it is a team. We are the unindoctrinators. And I encourage you to keep on keeping on, step it up, put the pedal to the metal with me. And we really are trying to defeat, and we are going to defeat, the plans of the Lord Yahweh, Marduk Yaldabaoth, rat bastard. We are the rat bastard exterminators, and we're in the exterminating business. And cousin, business is a booming. I'm Jeffrey Daugherty, the Christian Whistleblower. I'm glad you enjoyed this. Look for some more from me today, and look for some more of this series in the future. We're here to help you we're here to help you unwind your mind and unindoctrinate yourself.